All right, let's imagine this. You walk into a bank and you're there for a technical examination, and you need to look at their compliance with Regulation W.
Hmm.
It can feel pretty overwhelming, like a jungle of rules and definitions,
Yeah.
but we're here to help you cut through it all. We're
Absolutely.
going on a deep dive into Regulation W. That's the rule book that governs all the transactions between member banks and all their affiliates.
Yeah, and it's not just about, knowing the rules themselves, right? It's also about understanding like why they're there, the reasoning behind them.
Hmm?
Why is the FDIC like so concerned about these transactions and what are the potential risks that can come up? Because once you understand that, then applying the regulation becomes a lot more intuitive.
Exactly.
Like,
We don't want to just memorize things. We want to understand it.
exactly.
So we are going to break down 12 CFR Part 223, which is hot off the presses,
Mm-hmm.
into nice digestible pieces. And by the end of this deep dive, you should be able to confidently analyze transactions through a Reg W lens and be ready for that technical examination.
And we'll make sure that you can remember it all, right? So we'll be covering definition, all the key provisions, even some of those exemptions that make you scratch your head.
Yeah.
All of this in plain English.
Okay.
And we'll even have some quizzes along the way to help you test your knowledge and make sure it sticks.
Okay. Awesome.
Yeah.
So before we get into all the weeds of the rules and everything, let's start with the most basic question. Who exactly is an affiliate under Regulation W?
Yeah, this is where a lot of examiners kind of like get tripped up because the definition is not as simple as you might think. It's not just a parent-subsidiary relationship.
Right.
It's Regulation W leaves out 12 categories of affiliates, and this is under 223.2A.
12 categories. Wow, that's a lot.
It is.
So can you give us a rundown of like some of the key ones that maybe aren't so obvious?
Well, let's start with, probably the most straightforward is parent companies.
Yeah.
That one's pretty easy. But then we get into subsidiaries.
Okay.
And there are some exceptions with subsidiaries to keep in mind, like a subsidiary that's not a depository institution or a financial subsidiary
Okay.
would not necessarily be considered an affiliate.
Okay, so not all subsidiaries are created equal under Reg W.
Right, exactly.
So what else should examiners be looking for when they're trying to identify these affiliates?
Well, you're going to have companies under common and control.
Yeah.
And this can be kind of like a tricky one because it's not always clear just from an organizational chart we're talking about. Like any company that's even a subsidiary of a member bank that is controlled by the same parent company.
Mm-hmm.
And then it goes even a little bit further than that
Okay.
to companies under other common control, so meaning controlled by the same shareholders that control the bank.
Got it.
So you might have to look beyond just the immediate corporate structure.
Right. Trace it all the way up.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, what else?
Interlocking directorates.
Okay.
So if you see that a majority of a company's directors are also on the board of the bank,
That's a red flag.
that suggests a level of interconnectedness and influence that might mean it's an affiliate.
Got it. So it's not just about ownership. It's about who's calling the shots.
Right, yeah.
What about, some of the other more niche categories, like the sponsored and advised companies?
Oh, yeah, those can be really tricky.
Okay.
So think about things like real estate investment trusts that are advised by the bank or an affiliate,
Oh, yeah.
or investment companies where the bank or an affiliate serves as the advisor
Mm.
or owns a large portion of the voting securities.
Got it.
So if the bank kind of has their fingers in the pie,
Yeah.
there's a good chance it could be an affiliate.
So those advisory relationships and investment activities
Okay.
are really important to be paying attention to.
Yeah.
And it feels like we've just scratched the surface.
Oh, we've got more.
Okay, what else?
We've got depository institution subsidiaries, financial subsidiaries,
Mm-hmm.
companies held under merchant banking or insurance company investment authority,
Okay.
partnerships with the bank, or an affiliate as general partner,
Okay.
and the list goes on.
So it sounds like we really need to be meticulous in applying these definitions.
Absolutely.
But you mentioned that there are some exceptions to this definition.
Right.
So can you give us a few examples of those?
Yeah, so Regulation W does provide some exceptions to the affiliate definition, and that's 223.2B.
Okay.
For example, we talked about subsidiaries earlier.
Yeah.
Subsidiaries that aren't depository institutions or financial subsidiaries would not be considered affiliates. Also, companies that just hold the bank's premises or are engaged solely in a safe deposit business or hold only U.S. government obligations.
Okay.
So those are important for examiners to keep in mind so that they don't misclassify relationships.
Okay, so there are some safe harbors there, but we've got to be careful.
Exactly.
Any other like curveballs that we should be aware of when it comes to identifying affiliates?
Yeah, so a big one is that even transactions with non-affiliates can be treated as affiliate transactions.
What? How is that possible?
Yeah, that's in 2023.16.
Okay.
And the key here is to look at where the money is going.
Okay.
So if the proceeds of a transaction with a non-affiliate ultimately end up benefiting an affiliate, then it's going to be treated as an affiliate transaction.
Oh, so it's not just who they're doing business with, it's where the money's going.
Exactly.
God, that adds another layer of complexity.
It does, but it's important to prevent banks from just kind of going around the regulation. So just to like kind of recap here, we've got these 12 categories of affiliates, a few exceptions, and then we have this beneficial interest rule that kind of expands the reach of the regulation.
Yeah, it's a lot to absorb.
It is a lot to absorb, but it's vital for examiners to understand.
Yeah. Okay, well, maybe a quick quiz would help solidify some of this for us.
All right, let's do it.
So let's say you walk into a bank and you see these companies that are related to it. So which ones would be an affiliate?
Okay, I like it.
All right, so first scenario, you see a mortgage company and it's 100% owned by the bank's parent company.
All right, so affiliate or not?
That's an affiliate, right?
Yeah.
That falls under the companies under common control.
That is correct. All right, next scenario.
Good.
You've got a software company.
Right.
But a majority of its directors also sit on the board of the bank.
Okay, that sounds like interlocking directorate, so I'm going to say affiliate.
You got it.
Okay.
All right, last one.
Okay.
Janitorial services company that only cleans the bank's branches.
Ooh, that feels like a trick question. But if it only cleans the premises, then it wouldn't be considered an affiliate based on those exceptions.
That is exactly right. You are already thinking like a Reg W expert.
Okay, cool.
So it's all about applying those definitions and those exceptions very carefully.
Okay, so now that we've identified the players, the affiliates, let's move on to the actual rules of the game.
Right.
What are the limits and safeguards that Regulation W puts into place to prevent too much risk between banks and their affiliates?
Okay.
Yeah.
Now we get to the heart of Regulation W, Section 23A.
Okay.
This section is all about setting limits on how much risk a bank can take on with its affiliates.
Okay.
Think of it as like guardrails to prevent too much exposure and protect the financial system as a whole.
So it's about making sure they're not putting all their eggs in one basket.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are the specific limits that like examiners need to be aware of? Okay,
so there are two main quantitative limits that form like the backbone of Section 23A.
Okay.
The first one is 223.11, and it sets a 10% limit on covered transactions with a single affiliate. And this limit is based on the bank's capital stock and surplus.
So a bank can only have so much tied up with one affiliate?
Yeah.
Okay, what about all affiliates together?
Yeah, so for all affiliates combined, we look at 223.12. And that sets a 20% limit for the total amount of transactions with all affiliates.
Okay.
And again, calculated as a percentage of the bank's capital stock and surplus.
Got it. So double the limit when it's when we're dealing with all of them together.
Yeah.
But what does capital stock and surplus actually mean?
That is a great question.
Yeah, it seems important.
It's a very important term. And luckily, it's defined for us in 223.340.
Okay.
And essentially, it includes the bank's Tier 1 and Tier 2 capital.
Okay.
So that's their core capital buffer. Then we add in the allowance for loan and lease losses, which represents the bank's cushion against like potential loan defaults. And then finally, any investments in financial subsidiaries that are counted as covered transactions.
Okay, so it's their financial strength.
Right, exactly.
And their ability to absorb losses. So these limits are there to prevent them from overextending themselves.
Absolutely.
Okay.
But here's where it gets even more interesting.
Okay.
Even if a transaction falls within those quantitative limits, it still has to pass another test.
Okay.
Every single transaction also has to meet the safe and sound banking practices test outlined in 223.13.
Okay, now that sounds a lot more subjective than a number.
It is.
So what does safe and sound banking practices actually mean?
Yeah, that's all about judgment.
Okay.
And analysis. Examiners need to consider the terms and conditions of each transaction, even those that fall below those limits, and determine whether they're, prudent, and don't pose too much risk to the bank.
So you can't just blindly rely on the number. You got to dig deeper.
Right.
And look at the riskiness of the transaction.
It's a holistic assessment.
Okay.
For example, you could have even like a small loan to an affiliate. That could be a problem if it's poorly structured, or if the affiliate has a history of financial problems.
Right. Got it.
So
it's a combination of the numbers and the judgment.
right.
Okay. Let's do a quick quiz
All right.
to make sure we're understanding these limits.
I like it.
Let's imagine a bank has $1 billion in capital stock and surplus.
Okay.
What's the maximum loan they could make to just one affiliate?
All right. Think back to that 10% limit from 223.11.
Okay, so 10% of $1 billion would be $100 million.
That's right.
Wow, that's substantial.
It is. And that's just for one
Yeah.
single affiliate.
Okay.
Now, these limits give us a framework, but we need to dig deeper
Okay.
into the specific rules for different types of transactions.
Right?
So let's start with credit transactions where collateral plays a key role.
Okay, collateral. So that's all about having a backup plan.
Yeah.
Making sure they have something to fall back on
Exactly.
if the affiliate defaults.
Collateral is the bedrock of safe and sound lending,
Mm-hmm.
especially when we're dealing with affiliates. The rules for this are spelled out in detail in 223.14, and examiners really need to know this section inside and out.
Okay, so walk us through it. What are examiners looking for when they're trying to figure out if the collateral is okay for these transactions?
Okay, so first and foremost, 223.14a says a member bank has to make sure that every single credit transaction with an affiliate is secured at the beginning.
Okay.
No grace periods, no exceptions.
Up front.
Up front,
Okay.
collateral is the rule.
No wiggle room.
No wiggle room.
But the amount of collateral required, I imagine, changes based on what the asset is, right?
You're absolutely right. Different assets carry different levels of risk,
Mm.
and that's reflected in the required collateral percentages.
Okay.
223.14b spells out those different collateral percentages,
Uh-huh.
starting with like the safest assets obligations of the United States or its agencies.
Okay, so that's considered pretty rock solid.
Right, the gold standard, because
Okay.
they're backed by the full faith and credit of the U.S. government. These require 100% collateralization,
Okay.
which means the market value of the collateral has to equal the amount of the transaction.
Okay.
The same goes for obligations fully guaranteed by the U.S. government, certain eligible bankers' acceptances,
Yep.
and those special earmarked deposit accounts that are designated for securing affiliate transactions.
Okay, so for those low-risk assets,
Right.
examiners are checking to see that the bank is getting full value
Absolutely.
in collateral.
Full value.
Okay, what about obligations of states or their subdivisions?
Yeah, those are considered like slightly riskier than the U.S. government obligations. So they require 110% collateralization.
Okay, little bit of a cushion there.
Fertile cushion.
Okay, and then how about other debt instruments like corporate bonds or loans?
Those fall under the 120% collateralization requirement.
Okay.
Again, a bit more risk,
Mhm.
a bit more collateral.
Okay, and finally, we have the riskiest category,
Yes.
stocks, leases, and other real or personal property.
Right.
What's the requirement for those?
Those require 130% of the transaction amount.
Okay, so I see the pattern, higher risk, higher collateral.
Exactly.
But are there any types of collateral that are just like off limits?
There are 223.14c spells out several types of ineligible collateral.
Yeah.
And these are really important red flags for examiners.
Okay, so what should examiners be watching out for?
First and foremost, low quality assets.
Oh, yeah, there's that term again.
Remember that definition.
Hmm.
Substandard, doubtful, past due, all that.
Yeah.
Those are completely off limits as collateral.
So they can't use one bad asset to secure another.
No way.
What else is on the no-go list?
Another big one, securities issued by any affiliate.
Okay.
So they can't use their own affiliate's stock or bonds.
Right. Wouldn't really be a protection.
It wouldn't. Okay,
Right.
what else? Equity securities that are issued by the bank itself,
Oh.
also ineligible,
Mm-hmm.
as is any bank debt that represents regulatory capital.
Okay.
You know, we need to protect that capital.
Makes sense.
Intangible assets, like servicing assets, are also generally ineligible
Okay.
unless they're specifically approved by the board.
Got it.
And lastly, no guarantees.
Okay.
Letters of credit or similar instruments can be used.
Okay, so examiners are really looking at that collateral, making sure it meets the requirements and is not anything prohibited.
Absolutely.
But what about the legal side of things?
Right.
How do we make sure that collateral is actually legally secured?
Yeah, so that's where perfection and priority of security interests come in.
Okay.
And 223.14b lays out the rules.
Mm-hmm.
The bank has to have a perfected and enforceable security interest.
Okay, now those are some legal terms.
They are. So in plain English,
Yeah.
what that means is that the bank has to have a legally airtight claim to the collateral, even if the affiliate, goes bankrupt or is liquidated.
Mm-hmm.
No loose ends. Everything is legally buttoned up.
So we're making sure their claim is strong.
Yes.
What about priority?
Priority refers to, the order in which creditors get paid if an affiliate goes under.
Hmm.
The bank needs to have either a first priority security interest in the collateral or deduct the value of any senior security interest from the collateral's value.
So if there's another lender with a claim,
Right.
we need to adjust for that.
Exactly.
We need to be realistic about what they're actually going to get.
Yep. So now imagine this.
Okay.
What happens if some of that collateral gets paid down?
Yeah.
Or is retired over time?
Are there rules about that?
Absolutely.
Oh.
223.14e addresses that with a replacement requirement.
Okay.
So any retired or amortized collateral needs to be replaced
Got it.
to maintain that initial percentage.
So no letting it dwindle away.
No dwindling.
It's got to be maintained.
Ongoing monitoring.
Okay.
But like any good regulation, there are a few exceptions to these collateral rules. And 223.14 outlines a few.
Okay. So what are those exceptions?
One common exception is for acceptances that are already fully secured by other means.
Okay.
So the logic there is
Yeah.
if it's already backed by good collateral, you don't need to double up.
Makes sense.
Another exception applies to the unused portion of certain credit lines.
Okay.
So if the bank isn't legally obligated to advance any more funds until the borrower provides more collateral,
Okay.
then that unused portion doesn't have to be secured up front.
Okay. That's a little nuanced.
It is.
But I see the logic.
Yeah.
What else? Any other exceptions?
One more. Purchases of affiliate debt securities in the secondary market
Okay.
are exempt from these rules,
Mm-hmm.
but only if the bank is buying them from a non-affiliate
Right.
in a legitimate secondary market transaction.
So if they're just buying them on the open market like anybody else?
Right, like any other investor.
Yeah.
They don't have to worry about the collateral.
Got it.
Now, to really test your grasp on these rules,
Okay.
so just go quick quiz.
Right.
Imagine a bank lends $5 million to an affiliate and secures that loan with $6 million in corporate debt securities.
Okay.
Does this meet the requirements?
Okay. Let me think.
Okay.
Corporate debt securities, 120%.
Mm-hmm.
So $5 million times 120% is $6 million.
You got it.
Okay. So they are properly collateralized.
You are spot on.
Okay. Awesome.
So you're getting the hang of this. It's about applying those percentages and knowing what types of collateral are acceptable and which ones are not.
Okay.
Speaking of unacceptable things,
Yeah.
let's talk about a big prohibition that's closely tied to collateral. Low-quality assets.
Ah, yes.
This is where that definition of low-quality asset becomes very important.
Really important.
223.15 lays down the law. A member bank cannot purchase a low-quality asset
Mm-hmm.
from an affiliate, period, no exceptions.
No exceptions? What if it's a really good deal?
Nope.
Okay.
No exceptions.
But if they think they can turn it around?
Nope. This is about preventing banks from getting stuck with their affiliates' bad assets, no matter how tempting the price tag might be.
Got it. No go.
No go.
So examiners are looking out for anything that falls under that low quality definition.
Absolutely. Remember all those criteria we talked about earlier? Substandard, doubtful loss, non-accrual status, past due payments,
Yeah.
renegotiated terms due to financial problems,
Right.
foreclosed assets that haven't been reviewed yet.
Okay.
All red flags.
It's a comprehensive list.
It is.
Okay. But are there any times that a bank could buy an asset from an affiliate that's considered low quality?
There is one narrow exception.
Okay.
It's outlined in 223.15b,
Okay.
and it deals with renewals of loan participations
Okay.
involving problem loans.
Okay. So loan participations, that's where they buy a portion of a loan
Right.
from someone else.
That's right. And in this specific exception,
Yeah.
if a bank initially bought a participation in a loan that was not low quality when they purchased it,
Okay.
but then later on the loan deteriorates,
Oh, things went bad.
things went south,
Oh.
and it gets classified as low quality,
Okay.
the bank might be allowed to renew its participation or even extend additional credit
Okay.
even though the loan is now low quality.
Okay. But it's not just a free pass.
It's not a free pass. There are some conditions.
Okay. What are the hoops they have to jump through?
So first,
Mm-hmm.
the renewal or extension has to be approved by the bank's board of directors
Okay.
or a designated senior management committee.
Okay.
And there have to be standards in place to ensure the bank is acting prudently
Right.
to protect its initial investment.
Got it.
Second, the bank's share of the renewed or extended credit can't exceed its original share by more than 5%
Okay.
without getting prior written approval from the regulator.
Right. So no big increases without the FDIC's.
Exactly. And finally, the bank has to provide the FDIC with written notice of the renewal or extension within 20 days.
Okay. So transparency is key.
Transparency is key.
Okay. So a lot of safeguards there.
It's a recognition that there are times when it might be in the bank's best interest to try to salvage a problem loan,
Right.
but only under specific circumstances and with oversight.
Good. Right.
Now, let's do another quick quiz.
Okay.
Imagine a bank wants to purchase a loan from an affiliate.
Okay.
However, that loan is currently 60 days past due.
Uh-oh.
Can they go ahead with this purchase?
Okay. So thinking back to the low quality asset definition.
Yes,
60 days past due, that sounds like it fits.
it does.
So no, they can't purchase that.
You got it. You're seeing how these rules all fit together
Right.
to prevent problems. It's not about memorizing individual provisions.
Yeah.
It's about seeing the big picture
Right.
and protecting the system.
Got it.
So
This is starting to make a lot of sense.
good.
So we've covered quantitative limits in 23A. We've covered collateral.
Yep.
And we've covered low quality assets.
Thanks.
So what's next?
Now we shift gears to Section 23B,
Okay.
which focuses on ensuring fair dealing and transparency between banks and their affiliates.
Cool.
We're talking about preventing sweetheart deals
Yeah.
and making sure things are done at arm's length.
Okay, I'm ready for 23B. Let's dive in.
All right, that's right. Savings associations are definitely under Reg W, and Subpart I spells out the rules just for them.
Boop.
That would be 223.72.
Okay, so let's talk about savings associations then.
Okay.
How does Reg W apply to them?
Right.
What are some things that are different that examiners would need to know?
First off, it's important to remember that they have to comply with Sections 23A and 23B of the Federal Reserve Act,
Okay.
just like member banks. But there are some modifications
Okay.
and some additional restrictions, and you can find a handy chart that lays this out in 223.72B.
A chart, nice, a good resource for examiners.
Yes.
So what are some of the modifications that are in there?
Okay, well, one modification deals with the definition of affiliate. For savings associations, 223.2A and 12 are modified a little bit.
Okay.
And those sections include any company that the board determines could pose a risk to the safety and soundness of the savings association.
Okay, so it's a little broader.
Yes.
Okay.
Does the concept of financial subsidiaries apply to savings associations the same way it does to banks?
Yeah, I would think so.
It does not. The provisions about financial subsidiaries in 223.212 and 223.312 do not apply to savings associations.
Okay, why is that?
Well, it's because their subsidiaries don't meet the statutory definition of a financial subsidiary.
Oh, okay, so they just don't have those.
Right.
Got it. So what about capital stock and surplus?
Capital stock and surplus, yeah, that changes for savings associations as well.
Okay.
While the general definition is in 223.3D, for savings associations, it takes on the meaning that it has under their regulatory capital requirements.
Okay, so it's just a different definition based on their capital rules.
Yes.
Got it.
What about covered transactions? Are there any differences there for savings associations?
Yeah, I would think so.
There are a few. So the definition of extension of credit in 223.3I5D1 is modified to incorporate the restrictions that are outlined in 223.72C1.
Okay, so this is where those additional prohibitions come in.
Exactly.
Right.
And the definition of purchase of or investment in securities in 223.33 is also modified
Okay.
to reflect the prohibitions that are in 223.72C.
Okay, so they're kind of tying them all together.
Yes.
Got it.
There are also modifications to the definitions of depository institution
Okay.
in 223.3K and member bank in 223.3W, just to make it clear how they apply to savings associations.
Okay, so aligning those definitions.
Right.
Okay.
And the definition of operating subsidiary in 223.3 doesn't apply to savings associations. And 223.31, which covers acquisitions definitions of affiliates that become operating subsidiaries is also modified to refer to non-affiliate subsidiary instead.
Got it. So different terminology.
Different terminology. Now, there are a couple modifications to exemptions that examiners should also be aware of.
Okay.
223.42 F2 and G2, which exempt certain purchases of marketable and municipal securities, are adjusted for savings associations.
Right.
So instead of referencing the call report,
Yeah.
they refer to the thrift financial report.
Makes sense. Got to look at the right report.
Exactly.
Okay. Anything else about exemptions?
223.61, which we talked about earlier,
Yeah.
about how Reg W applies to U.S. branches and agencies of foreign banks, doesn't apply to savings associations
Okay.
or their subsidiaries.
So different rules for foreign banks.
That's right.
Got it.
Now, in addition to all these modifications,
Okay.
223.72C lays out some additional prohibitions and restrictions that apply specifically to savings associations.
Right. This is where it gets really interesting.
It does.
So tell me about these extra rules.
All right, so 223.72C deals with loans and extensions of credit. And it basically prohibits a savings association from making a loan or extending credit to an affiliate, unless that affiliate is solely engaged in activities listed in 12 U.S.C. 1467 AC FI
Right.
and defined in 238.54 of Regulation LL.
Okay. So very specific limits
Yes.
on who they can lend to.
Yes.
Okay. What about investments in securities?
Yeah, 223.72C covers that.
Okay.
And it prohibits savings associations from purchasing or investing in securities
Mm-hmm.
issued by any affiliate except for shares of a subsidiary.
Wow. Okay. So no buying up their bonds or debt securities?
That's right.
Okay.
And to be clear, a subsidiary there includes both banks and savings associations.
Okay. So lots of things for examiners to be looking out for,
Definitely.
especially with these savings associations.
This really highlights how important it is
Yep.
for examiners to really understand those unique rules for savings associations.
It's like having a whole nother toolbox
It
for
is.
each type of institution.
Yeah.
All right. Well, we've covered a lot of ground on Regulation W today.
We have.
From defining affiliates to navigating exemptions, it feels like a whirlwind.
It has been a whirlwind.
But I feel like I'm ready for that technical examination.
You are well on your way.
Okay.
But remember, the financial world is always changing.
Right. New stuff is always popping up.
It is. New affiliate relationships and transactions are constantly coming up.
So how do examiners kind of stay ahead of the curve
Yeah.
and make sure they're applying this stuff correctly?
It comes down to adaptability,
Okay.
continuous learning,
Mm-hmm.
and a willingness to apply these principles to new and challenging situations.
Okay.
Don't be afraid to ask questions.
Right.
Or seek out guidance if you're not sure.
Mm-hmm. And never stop being curious.
Exactly. Curiosity is key.
All right. Well, that's going to wrap up our deep dive into Regulation W.
Yes.
We covered a lot.
We have.
But learning is ongoing.
Absolutely.
So keep your Reg W manuals handy
Yes.
and stay up to date on all the changes and interpretations. And for all of our listeners out there, thank you for joining us on the deep dive, and we'll see you next time.
See you next time.